Let's go. Making the case. All rise. Let's go. Pin it. Do-do-do-do-do. What is going on, friends, family, cousins, and kinfolk? Welcome to Making the Case. I see a lot of my OGs up in here. What's going on, Alex? What's going on, Sawaki? Whew, we have an amazing show for you guys today. I'm excited. What's going on, Judge Kelly? We have an amazing guest on for you guys today. Did I put in all rise? Yeah, I said all rise. Okay, cool. Thank you for checking my spelling. As our room fills up, I want you guys to let us know where you're viewing our session from. Of course, I'm holding it down over here in Missouri, St. Louis. It's sunny but cold. I want you guys to be engaged in this process. I'm really excited. We've been really blessed to have a great lineup of guests. Last week, we had an amazing guest that helped us get our mentals together. So I hope you guys drunk your mushroom coffee, all right? And this week, of course, we have what I call a unicorn. When we have black judges, you guys, those are unicorns. They are one of ones. And one of the things is we want you guys to get an opportunity to engage, ask questions, because a lot of times we've never met lawyers. We've never met judges, more or less lawyers. And so I saw her. She posts a lot of amazing content to try to help you guys answer questions and also let you guys know the pathways to becoming a judge. And so I want you guys to be engaged in this process. You guys know all love. I'm going to call you out. What's going on? GQ Swervo holding it down in Miami, because I want this to be a learning experience where you guys are able to come away from this session fed. I don't care where you are in your journey. That means you could be a law student. That means that you could be a recent grad. That means that you could be a pre-law student. I want you to be able to come away from this session with a clear message in regards to what you're going to do next. Chi-Town holding it down. Where Dallas at, y'all? Where my people down in New York? What's going on? So as our room continues to fill up, one of the things that I say to you guys is, whatever question that you have, I want you to make sure and fill this chat box up. It may be a question. We want to make sure that you get these questions answered, because we want to make sure that you have a very clear passage in regards to what you're going to do and how you're going to move next. So as our room continues to fill up, I see Chicago in the house. I see Florida in the house. We're going to go ahead and get the Honorable Judge Shequitta Kelly on the line so we can go ahead and jump into these questions and you guys can get engaged and also get involved with the experience. So let's go ahead and get her on and let's see if I'll not mess it up. Let's go ahead and see. Did I get it right? Did it pop up? No, it didn't pop up yet. And so let's see. I'm going to try it again. I was hoping. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Hello.
Judge Kelly.
Hi. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly. First and foremost, I have to tell you thank you. I see you post a lot of amazing content, and when I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, I got to shoot my shot. I got to shoot my shot and see if I can get Judge Kelly on this show, because sis, you're one of one." And I'm sure as you were going through the process, you saw very few judges, but despite that lack of representation, you were like, "Oh, I'm about to be one of these."
Yeah.
And so I was like, because I posted a question, sis. I said, when's the first time you met a judge? And for a lot of people, it's been a long time or never before.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we might make this be their first time. So I'll give you the floor so you can go ahead and do your intro so they can know who you are, and we can go ahead and roll with it from there.
Okay. So I'm Judge Shequitta Kelly. I am the presiding judge of Dallas County Criminal Court number 11, which is a court that specializes in domestic violence cases. So that's all I hear is crime that occurs inside the home, violence that occurs inside the home. And I've been doing it for 9 years. I was elected in 2015. I am elected. I'm not appointed. So that means I did have to run, just like the president run. And prior to that, I was a prosecutor for 13 and a half years. I'm licensed in 2 states. So I prosecuted in Indiana for 6.5 years. I did domestic violence there. And then I moved here to Dallas, Texas, where it was much warmer. and I've prosecuted severe child abuse cases for the Dallas DA's office.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so I see people on the lives that's shocked and amazed. And so one of the things I start this question off, and of course, me and you kind of come from the same school. So you're gonna hear me say something, you're gonna laugh. So I'm gonna ask you this question. When did you fall in love with law?
Oh, as a little girl. And the reason why I fell in love with law really was to just impress my grandpa, to be honest, because my grandpa loved Perry Mason,
Mm-hmm.
and he used to always say how, oh, those lawyers, they are so smart. Oh, those lawyers, they are so intelligent. And I was looking at him like, I want to be that. I want to be. And so I started to, from that point, I was probably like 8 years old when I want to be a lawyer. And it was based on trying to impress my grandfather because of his high esteem for lawyers. So that's how it started.
It's amazing how like the seeds get planted at such an early age for everybody. Oftentimes when I ask that question, people go back to those times. I remember
Mhm.
when I was a little kid and this happened. And the thing
Yeah.
that's amazing about that whole process is kind of like a plant, it grows and
Hmm.
you water it. And so you've been watering it your whole life. And so how did that love for law like continue to grow to the point of where we are now?
Well, after my grandfather got my attention about lawyers, I started to do teen court. I don't know if you
Yeah.
all had teen court, right? And you got to play the role of the prosecutor and the role of the public defender. And sometimes you got to play the role of a judge, depending if they had like a real lawyer come in and play the role of judge. But that gave me the insight that I needed to understand, oh, this is where you help people, right? This is where you get in and you can fight for people and you can protect people. And so, I had a lot of things that were very traumatic in my childhood, and I felt like this was my key to be able to fight for people when I get older and stop them from going to through things that I went through. And so that is really when I was introduced to it by my grandfather, but then I began to fall in love with it when I understood the concept of what being a lawyer really means. It means that you actually can protect and fight people and seek justice. And so I put myself in the situation as to if I had a lawyer that was protecting me, maybe some of this stuff wouldn't have happened. And so that, I took off from there.
You know what? I know one of the things my son told me. He said, "You know what? Lawyers are like the real Avengers, except
Hmm.
their powers are being able to help save people,
Yeah.
to help protect people." And I was just like, "Wow!" From a kid's point of view, he says it very clearly because literally that's what you're doing. You're serving as a shield to try to protect people, and oftentimes it's either one we're thinking about the loved ones who either one we weren't able to protect, or
Hmm.
either we're thinking about the loved ones who we saw get protection through
Hmm.
the legal. And so
Hmm.
one of the things that's amazing about that process is it's like, one question that happens is because, in the world that we live in, oftentimes we could find ourselves being impacted negatively by the justice system. And it could turn into a way where we're like, man, because we all had family members, man, I don't trust lawyers. I don't trust none of them. But what's
Hmm.
amazing is that even though a lot of us may have grown up in those situations or had those family members at the barbecue or at the cookout, it really didn't deter us
Right.
towards going towards our journey to becoming a lawyer. And so, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had in your journey? Because people may say, "Oh man, Judge Shequitta Kelly, she got the robe. She don't know nothing about hard times. She had it easy. I mean, she a judge. She got elected. It must have been easy for her."
Oh, where do I begin? The road was so treacherous. Like, it was so tough. I mean, starting off, I was a single mom, right? I was a teenage mom, and I had these dreams of being a lawyer, but then everybody told me I couldn't do it because I was a teenage mom and I needed to get some type of job to just take care of my daughter. So when I finally made it with my daughter, I think my daughter was 6 years old by the time I got to, yeah, she was 5.5 by the time I got to law school. So that in itself was like very difficult trying to take a child with me or find childcare and study. And then studying for the LSAT with a child was also very hard. It took a lot of organization and a lot of discipline and a lot of no, I can't hang out. No, I can't do this. Please don't call me during this time. It was a big sacrifice. But even during my journey, I encountered, a lot of racism. And I didn't see anybody that looked like me. So I was raised in a very small town in Michigan City. And when I was raised during that time, there weren't any Black female lawyers. There weren't any Black lawyers that I knew of in my town. And so I didn't have anyone to say, hey, let me show you what you need to do and how you need to prepare and what you need to be aware of. And so I was just in there all willy nilly, just trying to trying to figure it out. And so, I was poor. So here I am. I'm a young mom. I'm a single mom. I'm trying to go to law school. I'm trying to figure it out by myself because my family, they were back then. It was kind of like going to college was more like what white people do, and so they didn't. I'm a first generation college student, and so it was kind of like, well, I can't help you. You just figure it out on your own. So I didn't have, and I went away for school. So I didn't have that safety net. I didn't have the financial backing or support that I needed. It was nothing close to easy. The journey was very tough. And, I think it taught me what perseverance means. And I feel like when you know what you want to do and you have a true love for it, nothing will deter you. You get up the next morning and you figure out how to put one foot in front of the other. And that's literally what I was doing. I did not have any magic key. I didn't have all these scholarships. I didn't have a mother and a father who were lawyers and owned their own law firm. I get it all the time. They're like, oh, you was probably like the Huxtables.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God. Are you kidding me? What? Because I got some makeup on my face and I'm smiling like I look like I'm just like rich. No, that's not how it went down. It was a struggle. I was on food stamps. I was on WIC, Section 8, all of that stuff. So, yes, the journey was far from easy, but it was so worth it.
Mm.
And it was so rewarding. What I like to tell people, and I was just telling my nephew this yesterday, don't chase the money, chase the dream because the money will come. And, a lot of times we get frustrated because, oh, I can't make no money. I can't, this is going to take too long, too much schooling, da, da, da. Chase the dream and you will make the money. It will come. And so that's what happened to me. It was not easy, but it was well worth it. And it prepared me for the role that I'm in now.
And I think it's beautiful because, one of the reasons, sis, why we started Making the Case is because I kind of wanted us to be able to normalize the struggle. Because at times those times you hear people say, well, you know what, man, it's hard. That must be a sign from God for me to quit.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that might be, like they say, diamonds you got to put a lot of pressure on them for you to get a diamond. That's how they make them. They put a whole bunch of pressure and heat to it. And before you know it, when it's done, it's this beautiful, expensive diamond. And that's how I look at myself in life is like, and I also call myself a rose out of concrete. Shout out to Tupac because, because, I came from very difficult circumstances where, people don't expect you to succeed, but I still was blossoming, even through all of that adversity and through the difficult times. And so people need to know to embrace that difficult path. I really believe nothing worth having, well, at least for me, nothing worth having comes without work, right? You have to work for it. And you said that people say, well, that must be a sign from God. Well, God said you gotta put one foot forward too, right? You gotta do your work too before he comes in. So you can't just expect things to just fall in your lap. You're gonna have to put a little effort in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for you guys who just joined us, we are honored to be able to have Judge Shequitta Kelly on, dropping gems, sharing her story, and also serving as a source of inspiration to so many people out there. I know, sis, I talk to a lot of moms out there, a lot of dads out there that oftentimes think that, we have this ideal cookie cutter image in our head of what a lawyer is, what a judge is, and we think, man, I don't fit into that box, so it's not something. Because I had one young lady, sis, who was like, you know what, man, I'm just gonna go do something else. And I was like, girl,
Mm-hmm.
study. You better go study. And then she went to study, thank God, got her LSAT score back, got a 155, and is now doing amazing things. And I think a lot of times we have to realize a lot of times growth is just something that's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's one of the biggest challenges that we have to be able to go through. And so one of the things I also want to kind of talk to you about is it's like, so imagine, right? So we got some people that just graduated. They're right now thinking about the bar exam, and I saw you dropping some gems about the bar because people, y'all pre-law students, y'all stressing about the LSAT. The bar's like, hold my water. Yeah, don't worry, hold my water. So what you gotta tell them about that? Because sis, after you graduated, you on mama duty, and you got the bar, and you did it the first dang time.
First
So
time.
how
I wasn't playing
are you
around.
doing, right?
Listen, we started this conversation saying, when did you fall in love with law? And I said, as a child. And so this is something that I literally have been working towards since I was in kindergarten, right? I am not about to let 8 weeks, that 8 weeks is not going to stop me. I'm going to accomplish this 8 weeks, put it under my belt and get this bar. And so I tell people all the time, sacrifice 8 weeks. You didn't sacrifice all these years of your life for this. You spent all this money. You got tuition that you paid. Let's just even start with the LSAT, just the money that you have to pay for the LSAT if you want to prepare and get ready for it. So you mean to tell me this is your love and this is your dream and you can't give up 8 weeks? I gave up. I was like, hey, friends, family, I sent out a mass email and I said, I love y'all. If y'all love me the way I think that you are, do not bother me until, and I put 2 days after the bar exam was finished. I said, I am studying. I don't need any distractions. And I know if you call me, it's going to be a mental distraction. So if you're worried and you want to know how I'm doing, contact my mom. This is my mom's number. If it's not an emergency, please do not contact me. And when I tell you not a single person contacted me the entire 8 months, that's how I know I have some good friends and a good tribe, because they were pushing for me. But not only that, I treated it like it was a job. I said, I'm going to give 110% of myself, because if I don't pass, I know there's nothing else I can do better. But if you don't give your whole 110%, there's still like dang, maybe I should have did this, and maybe I should. I didn't want to have that. I didn't want to have any regret. I didn't want to have any second doubts. I wanted to go in and know that I did everything in my being to pass this bar. And when I walked in there, I cut off social media. I wasn't checking emails. I talked to my mom like once a week. I sent my daughter to be with my grandmother. I took one day off. It was the 4th of July. And the 3rd of July, I was working. The 4th of July, I was off. The 5th of July, I was back working. Like, I treated it like a job. I didn't have a job. I took a loan out so that I could pay my rent in the summer, and I studied. And I noticed that a lot of my friends did not pass the first time. And I noticed they were like, hanging out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm not that's not gonna be my story. I'm a young mom, and I have to take care of my daughter. I can't do this all over again. I can't afford to. And so I went in there and I was so confident. I was nervous, but I was like, I gave this thing everything I could possibly give. So let's go. And I passed it. And it's funny because I had to teach myself a lot of subjects, because you don't learn everything in law school, but I taught myself tax. And because the tax professor at the time was just like failing people right and left, and I didn't want to risk my GPA. So I was like, I'll just teach myself that. And there was a 5-point tax question on the bar. And I started to get nervous because I taught this to myself. And I just wrote down everything I knew, and then I went back and answered the question. So as I'm walking out, there's a group of about 4 white guys, and they start talking about the tax question. And they said, oh yeah, I put this, and everything they said, I did not put. And so I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And they tell you not to talk to people after the exam, because you have a whole nother day, So I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, come to find out, the answer to the bar for the tax part was literally like my answer. I had it right. Everything from point to point to point. And I was like, but I doubted myself because of those 4 white guys, right? I doubted myself, and I knew my stuff. And when they were talking, I was like, and I'm like, well, I must have messed up. I doubted myself. And that says a lot about, us as Black people. We can't be doubting ourselves because we see our counterparts and we think they know more than us. We can't do that. We have to be certain within ourselves that we know what we know. And I was right. They didn't pass that part. None of them.
But you did.
But I did.
Put some respect on my name. And for you guys out there who may not be preparing for the bar right now, I want you guys to put in context what she's saying. What she's saying is she learned how to set healthy boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
That means understanding, what you can and can't do. Understand that on this journey to becoming a lawyer, you just ain't gonna be able to do the things you used to do before.
No, no, and
And
they don't play around with you in law school at all. You'll start first semester with 100 people, and second semester it'd be like 65. Like, where'd everybody go? Because they don't play. It's a. I feel like the legal industry is oversaturated, and I think some of these law schools they're trying to weed them out. And if you're not excelling and doing what you need to do, they get rid of you.
they got your loan for, and you didn't, and now you owe $60,000,
Right.
$70,000.
Right.
And I openly tell people, but seriously, I say, listen, man, law school is this lawyer dream stuff. It's selfish. If you do not make it a priority, it won't make you a priority.
Mm-mm.
Nothing to that. People like, cause I made a meme where I said, where with Cat Williams, where it said, when you look around, you'd be like, how the heck did that person become a lawyer? And it's because becoming a lawyer has nothing to do with IQ. It has.
Nothing.
Go ahead, tell.
Nothing. I say that all the time because I was not the smartest person in my class. I went to underprivileged school, and so underprivileged elementary. And so by the time I got to college, and I came from a poor neighborhood, so I didn't have the experiences that some people who were raised with successful parents and who could pour into them and take them to these special schools. And I didn't have all that. And so I always was struggling to keep up with even understanding some of the terminology my professors were using, right? But I I, I say that because I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm not intelligent. I'm just not the smartest person, and I learned slower. Once I got it, but I got to take my time to learn it. Law school was about discipline.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Because it's just a bunch of reading and understanding how to apply the law. And so if you're disciplined, you don't have to be the most intelligent person in your class. You really got to be the most disciplined person in your class. And to point this fact out, one of the girls in my law school, she was ranked in the top like 10%, and her last name started with a K. So we were always next to each other and everything. She sat next to me during the bar. She flew through the bar to the point I had to like turn because her turning those pages so fast and getting
Yeah.
through those questions so fast was messing with me. Right.
Okay.
And so that's another thing. When you're preparing and you're taking that bar, there's a psychological part that you have to get ready for too. I mean, I was even eating healthy foods because I wanted to feed my brain. I took it really seriously. So I had to turn from her because she was just distracting me. And I was like, oh my God, am I going too
Right.
slow? Because it's time pressured. And I had timed myself and I knew what time I was on, but her doing that was distracting me. She failed. She failed. She did not pass that bar. And she was in the top 10% of our class. And so that just goes to show, I know she was very intelligent, but it's not about intelligence. It's about discipline. It's about getting that work done. And it's about understanding what you're learning and being able to apply it. So,
We
I
dropping
mean,
gems tonight, sis. We dropping gems because you have to know how you study. You have to know how you prepare. One thing I tell them, sisters, I said, really what law school, and maybe you get the first taste of it with the LSAT, is you have to learn what works for you. And what works for you may not work for somebody else, but you have to find out what works
right.
for you in order to
Yeah.
be. And so now we got the license. We done got sworn in. You got the tears in your eye, held your hand up. And so what was life after that?
As a judge or as a sworn in
Sworn
lawyer?
in lawyer. We're going to get to the road in
Okay.
a second.
Hey man, I was on cloud nine, right? Like, because I started off at the prosecutor's office, and you know, you get this little shiny badge at the prosecutor's office. So, when you show the badge, people let you in places. You get discounts at restaurants and all that stuff. So that was cool. And then I had a salary job. Now, I told you I was poor, so I was on food stamps before I became a lawyer. So now I done went from food stamps to a salary job. I got benefits and my own office, and that part of it was fun. But what I don't really like about law school, and I complain about it all the time, which is why I teach my interns when my interns intern for me, they have to try a case,
Mm.
is that law school doesn't prepare you to be a lawyer. And so I started working at the DA's office like on a Thursday. And on Tuesday, they gave me, I had a trial on Tuesday.
Ooh.
And and I'm like, so what do I do? He was like, well, you got to, my supervisor's like, you got to prepare for a dire. I had never even seen a jury trial in person. So, and now you want me to pick a jury? I was like scared out of my mind. I went home, I'm crying. I'm like trying to figure out how do I do a voir dire. And he gave me like a little cheat sheet. And then I'm like, okay, so Monday I've got to interview all these witnesses and it was a domestic violence case, misdemeanor. And he threw me in. And I just think, luckily for in that situation, he knew that was a case that he was going to dismiss. He was like, I felt like I was going to have to dismiss it. So I figured, why not just throw you in and sit next to you? And so you can get the feeling of what it feels like to do this. Right. Um, but these are people's lives, and we know that the criminal justice system has a lot of people in it that looks like us that are being unfairly punished, that are being wrongly accused. And you got lawyers coming out and hanging up their shingle and not knowing what they're doing. And you're playing with people's lives. Like, that's the downside, I think, because think about it, when you go to med school and doctors go to med school, they have to do residency hours because they're dealing with someone's life. And I feel like we should have to study underneath a lawyer in the field of practice that we want to be in for at least, a couple of months so you can just understand.
Yeah.
But they just throw you out there, and that's I think that's an area where we could improve as a profession. But yeah, I was scared out of my mind. I tried the case. It was a domestic violence case, like I said, but the little boy came and testified against his mom. And he said, no, that mama picked up the broom and hit daddy across the head and he just pushed her away. And the jury was like, not guilty. And so, I felt like I really lost and it was horrible. And my supervisor was like, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted this to happen so you could understand the whole process. And from there on, I began to excel. I was studying late on my cases. I took it seriously. I was living my dreams. It was phenomenal.
And you guys, we're with Judge Shequitta Kelly. Sis started for the bottom. Now we here.
Started from the bottom.
If you want it, man, it comes down to your willingness to be able to step outside of your comfort zone and go for it. And so
Yes.
it's been an amazing thing just talking about your journey. And so one of the things I oftentimes wonder is, the world comes a whole lot smaller when you start practicing law. And how was it with you going out in the community where you lived at while also being a prosecutor? Because one of my friends was like, yeah, I kind of can't really go out too much because I just see
Mhm.
people sometimes and it'd be kind of awkward.
Yeah. So I ended up prosecuting. The good thing is my first job was not in my hometown. So I didn't have to worry about seeing anybody that I prosecuted. But I also was prosecuting big drug dealers. And so I started off doing high profile, yeah, drug cases. And um, it was cool at first until I started getting followed. And there was a case that I was prosecuting, and we did a raid on the house, and you know, the undercover officers no one ever really figures out who they are, but the prosecutors, they always know. And so I remember being in Blockbuster. I was driving home and I noticed a car was behind me. And one thing as a prosecutor, I feel like you're just very conscious. And even as a judge, you're very aware of your surroundings like all the time. And so I saw a car behind me and I kept looking in my rear mirror and I'm like, is this car following me? So I made some turns. Yep, car was behind me. So I didn't want to go to my house.
Right.
So I pulled over at a Blockbuster. And I got into the Blockbuster and I'm walking down the aisles. This guy parks, black dude. He comes, he comes into Blockbuster and he goes to the other side of Blockbuster. And luckily, because I was a prosecutor, I just called one of the SWAT members and I was like, hey, I got a guy that's following me and I got to get out of this Blockbuster without him following me. And they came in and they basically was like, what are you doing? What, are you following her? And so he was like, no. And they were like, where you, let me see your license. Like they start questioning him. And then I was able to leave. But after that, that put me on my nerves was, I never partied. I never went to clubs and, inside the town that I was in. Actually, I would only go out when I was out of the country or out of town, like on vacation. I still am like that because you don't know who you made mad, and they might spit in your food or try to bother you. And so that's after that situation happened, it was like, okay, this is real. Like, you're locking up people for life. And so they have family and they have friends that you have pissed off. So you need to be aware of your surroundings.
But the thing that's amazing also about it is that with that great power comes a great responsibility. And I oftentimes wonder how oftentimes does it hit you when you were being a prosecutor, like, wow, you know, I'm doing it. Like my granddad, I did it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing what I was going to do. When did you have that moment?
Well, I had that moment, I would say, in year three, maybe, or two, but it didn't come that way. I was sitting in court, and the way they would bring the inmates up, they would chain the inmates all 12 at a time, and they would chain them by their ankles, and put the handcuffs on them. So they had leg shackles and the handcuffs, and they would sit them in the jury box. And so I was preparing. I had probably like, 6 or 7 cases that day, and I had my head down. I was preparing all the notes or whatever for the plea. And I looked up, and 11 out of the 12 were Black men.
Mm.
And it just didn't sit right with me. I just sat there, and I turned to, because I worked in an all-white county. So I turned to my colleague, who was also a drug prosecutor, and I said, why is it that 11 out of 12 of those dudes are Black? And he was
Mm.
like, it's just a coincidence. I was like, no, that's not a coincidence. And so at that point, I realized that there's a problem in the system. I knew there was in the past, but it was in my face. Like, you always heard, you saw Rodney King get, beat by the police. And so you heard about that stuff, you saw it, but experiencing it, were on my dime. And I have been called a sellout.
Mm.
They was like, oh, you work for the man, And so I was sitting there in that situation, and I was like, this is not right. This does not feel right. You mean to tell me that 90% of the people we have on today's docket are Black men? And and that's when I had that grandpa I made it moment, because that's when I realized, nah, you got to change this, sis. You got to do your part. You're going to have to start investigating these cases and holding these police officers accountable and ask those tough questions. Even though you're the prosecutor, you have the power to dismiss it. And that's
Mm.
the great thing. And so, at that point, I really did start, like, holding police, pulling those in-car videos. I saw one police beat the crap out of this Black dude, and he had his hands up, and he got out of the car and just started banging in the head with the baton. And then it hid the video from me. I kept ordering, and I was like, why ain't y'all sending me? Because I started ordering all the in-cars on all my cases, because I want to figure out, like, why. Why we have so many Black people? Like, do y'all not go to the white neighborhoods? What is going on? And I started seeing stuff. And in the police field, they don't snitch on each other. Like, it's a tight knit, but if it's me and my people against you and your people, you're gonna have to come up off of something. Like, I'm sorry. And so when I saw that one video, when they finally sent me the video, this is after we went all the way up to the chief of police, and he sent it over, and I saw that, and I said, this is why y'all didn't want to send it to me. So that officer ended up getting suspended without pay. I don't remember how long, but everybody was mad at me. Why would you do that? Why would you? Even some of my colleagues. And I said, because he beat a Black man. And this is not what I'm here for. I'm going to make my grandpa proud. I'm going to make my grandpa proud. And I'm going to make sure that I do what's right while I'm in this position, where I have the power to do it. Because before, I didn't have it. But once I got it, I was changing lives. And I was getting rid of stuff that wasn't just.
Spade a spade. Call it how I call it.
Yeah, don't
And,
do it if you don't want to get caught.
and works
Don't
both
let it come across my desk.
and works both ways. And so, is that what led you to be able to want to run for elected office?
Somewhat. That was part of it. I was always a prosecutor for victim crimes. I did like my stint in the drug division, and actually that little blockbuster situation kind of spooked me. So I didn't stay in that division too long. But most of my career has been in victim crimes. And what I realize is that a lot of these people, a lot of offenders have no, they're just getting thrown away. They're just getting incarcerated. And my job as a prosecutor was merely only to protect the victim. In my mind, it was like, oh, this is my job. This is what they teach you. You're supposed to protect the victim in the community, not look at the whole picture on what is the best thing for the community. And sometimes that means helping the offender, right? And so that's when I realized that I wanted to do more. But I was prompted by a gentleman who I had this big capital murder case. This guy stomped a 22-month-old baby to death. Okay, so I'm in there. I get this conviction, and I'm feeling good because it's a high profile case. I'm here in Dallas, and the media's out there wanting to talk to me, and the jurors are thanking me, and everybody's just like it's just great. I'm at the top. I'm at the prime of my career. And there's this gentleman who I had a lot of respect for, who was a defense attorney, and he was good. He came up to me and he kind of did the slow clap. He was like, "Man, that was a great job. You good." And I was like, "Thank you, thank you, And he said, "But you don't dream big enough."
Woo.
He's like, "This all you want? This all you think you could do?" And I was stunned. He was like, "You need to dream bigger." He said, "I see more in you than you see in yourself."
Mm.
And he just left me like that.
That-
And I was mad, but he was right. He was right. And so that I said, man, I guess I hadn't really looked at how far I possibly could go with this law thing. I hadn't seen any black female judges, so I didn't have that representation. And so, but when he put that on my heart and he said he see more of me than I see in myself, I was like, oh no, sir. I'm gonna have to step it up. And that's when I ran for judge.
And how was that experience like going out? Like, for example, when we talk about campaigning, how is it campaigning when you're running for judge as opposed to running for another different type of position?
Oh my gosh. So campaigning, well, let me say I ran during a time where Black women weren't really being accepted on the bench. And so that was really difficult. And so when I would go out and knock on people, I basically did like the Barack Obama grassroots type campaigning. I just knocked on thousands and thousands and thousands of doors. I went every day and was, trying to hit like 50 to 200 doors, depending on how many people I had. And so, what I realized is that a lot of people were doubting my credentials because I was Black. Um, my experience, they didn't believe that I had been a prosecutor for 13 and a half years at that time. They thought that they didn't trust me, and it was because I was Black. And so that made it a lot more difficult. But it also made me go back to my people in the community who were receiving me
Right.
and encourage them to go out and vote. Being a Black elected official, a Black judge, is hard because unfortunately Black people don't donate. They don't donate as much as white people to campaigns. And so the Black judges who were running at the time did not have a lot of money. Lucky for me, I came from a whole nother state, and I came from a group of a lot of white people. I work with all white people. So they was like, how much you need? So I had, I didn't have to eat off of just the people here in the courthouse. I was able to reach out to my old colleagues that knew my reputation and knew, that I would be a great judge. Some of my colleagues who were out there running literally were taking out big loans from the bank, to support their campaign. And so there's a lot of long days. I used to go on Sundays, I would go to like 7 different church services back to back to back to back to back. Because you're trying to meet as many people as you possibly can so that they will show up at the polls and vote for you. It's exhausting. And it's challenging because it's nasty. Politics is a nasty game. And I'm just not a politician. I'm just a person. I'm just that little girl who wanted to change someone's life. And now I have the skills to do it. And I just want to do it without all of the crap that comes with it. Yeah.
And so, do you have debates? I mean,
Mhm.
are there debates? I
Yeah.
didn't even know.
So if you have an opponent, and I ran one of the harder races during my time because I had a black female opponent. And so it's kind of like some black people, if you knock on their door and you're like, hey, can I put my yard sign in your yard? They're like, you running for judge? Sure, put it in my yard. But then if my opponent showed up and said the same thing, they'd be like, you running for judge? Sure, put it in my yard. So there were yards that had both of our signs because they didn't realize we were opponents. So yes, you have to debate. Um, Multiple debates, and you have radio interviews. So you'll go from, and they're live debates and they're in-person debates, and there's like a lot of the Greeks come out. The Greeks host it, so you have a lot of HBCU people there who are very intelligent about like things that are affecting Black lives. And then you have, like I said, a lot of the Greeks, and then you have the old Black church women that show up.
The hats.
But lucky for me, that was my audience. I'm a church girl. I mean, I'm a Pentecostal church girl, and my grandmother raised me right. And so the old Black women, those were the ladies that I loved, you know. But they ask you the hard questions, and it's just kind of like they grab the mic, they walk up, and they say, "What are you gonna do different when it comes to, you know, Black men being incarcerated? Explain what your goals are. What's your vision?" And you got to answer it right there on the spot. There's no, you can't prepare for it. They're not going to give you a script and say these are the questions to expect. No, you just go in there and you have to know that you're the person for the job and why. And if you don't, you're going to be embarrassed.
So I want to ask this. So like the votes are tallied. How was it the night that you found out that you won? How was that moment? Your daughter, your family, your loved ones. How was that experience?
So I stayed at the polls. My campaign manager, that's another thing. You get a campaign manager and that costs too. But my campaign manager called me around, the polls closed at 7, and she called me like around 5:30, and she said, hey, the early votes totals have come in, and it looks like you're winning so much that there's no way she'll be able to catch up with you. So why don't you come back to the hotel and just watch the rest of the results here in the hotel with us? I was like, there's still a line of people out here voting, and I cannot go home. So I stayed until all the polls were closed. And I was just like, okay, here we go. And so we had like 5 different phones, we had computers, we had tablets, and we had the TV up. Everybody's just refreshing, and it's just like a madhouse of everyone who, all of your supporters and your volunteers, they're all so
Right,
invested. And so
right.
yeah, so they're just, I mean, like last night, I'm certain the people who were running for election were just sitting there on pins and needles. And it showed that I had so many points higher than her, but there was still so many polls that hadn't come in. And so you just sit there, you just, you're like, all right, we'll see. But the numbers for my election did not finally come all the way in until the middle of the night. And so I had dozed off. I woke up, I dozed off. We're in the hotel room, all of us just trying to, see this thing through. And then all of a sudden it came up and everybody's like screaming. They're like, you won! Yes! And I just thought about being that little girl with my grandpa. And my grandpa's deceased now. And he never got an opportunity to see how far I made it. He died when I was in college. And so I just started to weep. Like I was just sobbed because I'm like, Grandpa, I did it. Like I really, really like took your legacy to the next level. Someone who he only had a fourth grade education because he had to quit school and help his family, right? And so he always said, he calls me Butterbee. Get your papers, Butterbee, get your papers. And in that moment, I was just like, oh my God, this is the freaking little poor girl who had a baby at freaking 16, and now I'm about to be a judge. Like I still get chills. It never gets old. Like it was amazing. It was amazing.
At that time, I'm sure you would have been like, the guy that told me to go think bigger. Okay, I need you to stay away. Okay, let me enjoy this moment for tonight before
Yeah.
you start telling me harder and go bigger. I love this moment. This is people are in the comments comments, it's like, this is inspiring, this is fire, this is amazing. Because I think the thing that's oftentimes is because, like you said, as a judge, almost for your own safety, your own well-being, for your own quality of life, you kind of got to shelve yourself off from everybody.
Yeah.
And so where you go out and explore, you have to do that in other states or in other countries. And
Yeah.
so this story, I think, for a lot of people, is giving so many people hope. Like, you know what? Maybe I can do this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm telling y'all, just please just think about the things I have said to you about being that teenage poor girl with the lack of great education. If I can do it, like you can too. It's just about discipline. I am very disciplined. I'm very organized. And that my discipline has allowed me the life that I live now because I've always been willing to sacrifice, what I want for what I need to do
Hold
first.
on, can you
And so
say that again?
I've always been willing to sacrifice what I want for what I need to do first.
Mm.
And that sacrifice, that means, you want to go party or you want to you want to take this trip, but you need this money for your LSAT or you need this money for your books. Like you got to sacrifice. And that's what it was that got me here. Not IQ, not the highest grades. It was the sacrifice, the discipline. I mean, I tell everybody that it's discipline. And before you know it, you look up and you're like full of tears because you've hit your goal. Like you're like, oh my God, I am here. I am here. And can't nobody take it back.
And, and the power of belief is just the power of belief, you
Mhm.
know. So one of the things, so how has your term as judgment, how has that experience been for you thus far?
You know, it's been a lot different than what I expected. I
Okay.
expected that I would just show up for work and I would call the balls and the strikes and I would make sure that justice was served and the community was protected. And I will tell you that most of my work occurs off the bench
Mm.
because because yeah, I can call the balls and strikes, but my goal is to try to keep people out of the criminal justice system. I'm big on recidivism, trying to reduce recidivism. And I think, the best way to do that is to implement programs that help people versus incarcerate them and to educate people, especially our young people, right? Because we're in a time now where generations, they don't, like my nephew said, he's 18. He said, "TT, people don't fight no more, they shoot." And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, they don't fight, they shoot. I'm like, oh my God, where I was raised, it was fighting.
Girl,
Meet you outside, you know what I'm saying? Like, meet you at the park. And so I have went from being the judge where I thought, well, first of all, I want to say this before I forget. People always say they don't want to or they can't do this. I can't be a lawyer because I don't know what that means. I can't be a judge because I don't know how to do that. But I just want you all to remember this when you say that to yourself is that everybody has a first day. No one knows how to do something until they do it. And so that it's just that simple. A judge has a first day. I didn't know what I was doing on my first day and I figured it out. And so that's the same thing with being a lawyer or whatever you want to be. Just remember, don't count yourself out because you don't know how to do it. You're going to learn how to do it. But when I showed up, I was like, okay, all right, I get to call the balls and strikes. I know the law. I know the law, right? And then I had this young gentleman in front of me. He came, he had tattoos all over his neck and he had a couple teardrops and his pants were sagging. And he was like, no, just real casual with me. And finally I stopped and I said, "Where's your father?" And, and he put his head down. First, he had his head back looking at me like, he wasn't threatened by anything I was saying. And then he put his head down and he said, "I don't know that man." And he started crying. And I said, "Do you have a child?" And he said, "I have a son." And I said, "Well, don't you want to be better to your son than your father was to you?" And he started weeping to the point I had to stop. I was admonishing him about his rights and stuff, and I had to stop. And I got off the bench and I said, "Oh no, this isn't all I'm supposed to
right,
do. This
right,
isn't, I
right.
gotta do more. I gotta start creating some type of program to help people like him because how did I ever expect him to make good decisions with nobody to teach him the way. And so I created a program where I, instead of putting people in jail, I pour into them so that they know their self-worth. Because I believe when you know your self-worth, you are not going to compromise it for anybody. And
Facts.
so through a bunch of different things like therapy, you know, substance abuse or mental health, we have a lot of undiagnosed offenders, domestic violence offenders. And so I get them all of those things while at the same time pouring into them. I make them come see me, every month. And I'm like, tell me something good. Tell me what you're doing better in your life than you was last month. And I I mean that has changed so many people, and they don't come back to my court. They don't get another offense. And then I go and I talk to kids. We got these high school students out here. Girls are doing the craziest things that we would never do, and guys are carrying guns to school. So I'm talking to them about the consequences. If you educate people, they make better decisions. Sometimes people just do things for lack of knowledge. And I'm like, you understand when you send that girl's picture of her naked to your homeboy, you understand that's sexting and that's a felony? You understand that? They're like, huh? I'm like, they're like, well, I deleted it off my phone. Oh, really? Because you understand that I could still get that deleted message. All I got to do is send a subpoena to your carrier. You can? Yes. Stop doing that.
Wow.
And so, my job, I think you can be a good judge just by showing up, but you could be an impactful, game-changing, life-changing judge by doing more than just showing up. And that's what I want to do.
Well, no, that's what you've been doing. This
That's how I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do.
And so one of the things that so we got people in the chat, I think ask some questions. Let's see
Okay.
here. The question I want to ask you is, what would you say was your biggest challenge where you shocked yourself? Where you were like, dang, I did that. Outside of some of the stuff that we talked about, some of the biggest challenges you faced during your journey to becoming a lawyer?
Becoming a lawyer. Um, biggest challenge. Well, I think I'm going to tell you what a biggest challenge while I was a lawyer. But I think to becoming a lawyer, the biggest challenge was doing it alone, um, without any direction, without any guidance, and to be able to succeed in that journey without knowing what I was doing. I was kind of like, "You good, girl? You're good." Now, I'm not saying I didn't make a lot of mistakes along the journey, but and there's probably easier ways I could have gotten things done, which is why I dedicate so much of my time to law students so that they don't have to go through a difficult journey. But being a teenage mom and doing it all by myself and still managing to pay bills and do those internships at those firms and just figuring it out, to me, that was like one of the biggest things. That was huge to me.
I don't know. It's
So
something amazing about when you have a child that's dependent on you. It just brings out a certain level of strength and resilience that maybe you didn't even realize that you had.
I'm telling you, I did a podcast a couple months ago, and he asked me what my schedule was in my first year of college. And when I started to list what I was going to class from 8 in the morning to noon. Then I went to from noon to like 2. I worked at my daughter's daycare, and then I went back to class from like 4 to 6. And then I came home and I cooked dinner for my daughter. I picked her up from the daycare, cooked dinner for my daughter, and then at night I went to work from 11 to 2 in the morning. And I was 18 doing that. And when I said this, I was like, that is crazy. I don't know how I did that, but you're right. I don't even think it's just having a child. The child will definitely make you be on your A game, but I also think it is the lack of not wanting to go back, right? And the drive to go forward. And so I was continuously looking back like, that's what's back there if you fail. And not only that, there's a lot of people that are watching you, Shequitta, that are waiting on you to fail or waiting on you to succeed. Because if you succeed, that gives them permission to do it too.
Absolutely.
If you fail, that closes the doors for a lot of people. They're just going to be like, she did that, and look what happened to her. I'm not doing it. And so that pressure for me to not fail was always back there on my back, but it was a constant reminder that you got something to prove. And
Mhm.
so you get out there and you chase it and you go hard and you grind. And I was doing it. I had 16 credit hours, like I was in it. And my daughter was the inspiration because I wanted her life to be better than mine. But she wasn't the only reason. I had a point to prove and I had a dream to catch.
Mhm.
So
You dropping bars, dropping bars. Let's see. Somebody had a question. They said, Judge, what are your thoughts on the new LSAT logic game change coming in August?
they changing the logic games to see. I didn't even know about this. Do tell me.
Like they saying bye bye to them, and they're gonna replace it with another reading comp or another one of the other type of sections.
Mm. See, for me, I like the logic games. That was like, hey, I got that thing figured out. Once you outline it right in the beginning, so I don't know. I mean, I think what it comes down to, honestly, is preparation. Like for me with the LSAT, I just took a bunch of mock exams. I mean, of course, I had a tutor and I took a LSAT class, but after that, I just practiced and made sure I went over my answers to know what I wasn't getting. And so I think if they take the logic games out and they supplement it with comprehension or whatever it is, you can still accomplish it. You're just going to have to study it and figure out where you're not doing well to improve on. So I don't
All
think
right.
you let that stop you. I don't think you let that scare you. You just prepare in a different way.
Yeah, because let's keep it a buck, you guys. The world's constantly changing, and we have to just be able to understand for us to be able to evolve and pivot to try to keep up with that change to go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and get our dreams. Now,
Mm-hmm.
my girl, so she's actually from your area, Dallas, holding it down. She has a question. She said, "How does one volunteer for the Pipeline to Possibilities program?"
Oh, we love volunteers. So you can email us at info@pipeline of possibilities, or you could DM us on Instagram, pipeline of possibilities. I run the Instagram, so I'll get it. But yeah, we love volunteers. You would love the program too, especially as a law student.
And I'm definitely calling out Sawaki. Sawaki sent the message. I'm sure Sawaki B1 is definitely going to hit that up. And so I always like to end our lives with this one thing. Is right now there's probably because right now, say this week, people got their LSAT scores back. People are getting rejections. Some people are getting wait lists. And it's a really, an anxiety-stricken time for a lot of people who are applying to law school, or even for people about to prepare for finals in law school, or about to sit for the bar. And I always give you guys the last word of what are some encouraging words that you want to give to somebody out there who's struggling, who's on the cusp of giving up. Because I think, on this journey, we can all both attest there are highs, man, there are lows too. And
Right.
oftentimes those words that we get is what keeps us motivated to go ahead and fight on. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to give you the floor.
Well, first I want to say delay is not denial. And I'll tell you about my best friend. We both studied for the bar at the same time. I passed, he failed, and he had to call and tell me that I passed because he called for comfort and I didn't know that I had passed yet. And so it was at that point, he felt like his world literally was just crashing because, I don't know about now, but when I took the bar, your job was contingent on you passing it. And so, he had a mortgage and he just had a lot of stuff and he called and he was just devastated. And I said this to him too. I said, delay's not denial. Just get your head back in the game and take it in February. And he is now one of the most successful lawyers that I know. No one, if you didn't do well on the LSAT this time, take it again, study harder, get your head back in the game. And to be honest, when you become a lawyer, when you get to law school, that LSAT is insignificant. And when you become a lawyer, people could care less about the LSAT. So don't worry about, I think we let our pride get in the
Yeah.
way and we're so worried about what people think. And I just want you to know if you are one of those people that are in the middle of applying for this LSAT or taking the LSAT, just prepare. Or if you're one of those people who did not get a good score on the LSAT, realize what you did wrong, cry a couple tears, brush yourself off, get your head back in the game because delay is not denial. And what is so important right now with this LSAT is going to be so insignificant when you're in law school and when you take that bar and you're a lawyer. I couldn't tell you what my LSAT score is right now. No one cares about that, right? And so just keep that in the forefront of your mind when you get frustrated. You're like, this is just temporary. Okay, what do I got to do to get this right? I obviously didn't do something right. Let me get my head back in the game. Now, as far as law school, I always say that, and I wish I had known this. People want to try to apply to these really big, prestigious schools, and that's really nice and all. But depending on the type of lawyer you want to be, it doesn't matter. And so, and so, unless you want to go work for like the White House or a huge civil firm, you really could just go to any law school you wanted to go to, because it's not about what school you go to; it's about passing the bar. And so if you don't get into the school you want and you know, like, okay, I want to be an immigration lawyer or I want to do tax law at a small firm, you can go to whatever school you want to. You don't have to go to this huge prestigious school that's going to cost you $1 gazillion, right? I mean, so that's another thing I would like for people to remember is to just take your pride down a little bit. Don't worry about what people are thinking and how things look. Worry about getting there, getting in and passing the bar. And so that's my word of encouragement. If you feel down, that's okay. You're gonna feel down. I cried so many times. I was just like, I remember calling my grandma like a week before the bar, and I was like, I can't do it, Granny. I can't do it. And she said, get off my phone and get your head back in them books. She didn't even say it's gonna be okay. She was like, get off my phone. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Prove it to yourself. Don't give up. Don't worry about what people think because those people not gonna matter. These people are not gonna matter. I don't know anybody. I'm not associated with anybody from that LSAT, and I have a few friends from law school. So just think long term where you're going, not where you at. You deserve it. You deserve to step into your dreams and not give yourself excuses and not throw any pity parties. You can cry about it for a minute and then you need to get yourself together. Like my grandma said, get off my phone and get in that book. So every time you start feeling sad, get off TikTok and get in that book.
What? Well, Judge, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You guys could also follow the Judge on Instagram. She be dropping that fire, and also it's about inspiring and helping you guys along this journey. Judge, you're now part of the tribe. I'm so excited to have you with us. And like you said, get off that phone and let's go make these dreams happen.
Let's
Thank you so much
go.
again. And
Thank you.
the fight for your lawyer dreams. And we'll see you again, same time next Wednesday. Peace and blessings.
Bye.